Good morning, everyone. Good morning to all citizens listening on the various media. Welcome to this, the 20th meeting of the Joint Select Committee on Social Services and Public Administration. And as a background to this meeting, persons may be aware that this particular committee had at its very first inquiry the issue of violence amongst students in our schools. We consider this to be of deep concern because schools, we know, are meant to be places where we learn. We're supposed to be focusing our energies on physics, chemistry, math, biology, and history. But yet we have seen and we see on the media, social media, mainstream media, instances where children are engaging in violent actions. And also, we have not focused too much attention on the cyber aspect, the violence which occurs with the use of social media. We have seen the more determined type of violence. And we have seen girl-on-girl violence, boy-on-boy violence. We have seen groups. And we undertook a detailed public inquiry as to what the causes may be and what some of the solutions are, which could be implemented within our school systems so that such instances can be lessened over time. This morning, we are here to examine the responses of the Ministry of Education as a follow-up to our public inquiry, as a follow-up to the report that we presented. We are here to determine what, if any, measures have been implemented so far. We have a number of stakeholders with us to give us a progress report on where we are with respect to addressing this worrisome problem in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. At this time, I would ask the representatives of the various organizations to introduce themselves so we will know who are here with us to advise the committee on what is really happening in this troublesome area in our society. So may I can start with, I understand the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Education is here. May I ask the Honorable Permanent Secretary to introduce herself first, and then we go on.
Pleasant good morning. Leno Baptiste Simmons, Permanent Secretary, Acting Ministry of Education.
Thank you very much.
Pleasant good morning to all. John Rupchen, Chief Education Officer, Acting Ministry of Education.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. John Thompson, Director of School Supervision and Management, Acting.
Do we have a representative from the National Parent Teachers? Okay, there are more representatives from the Ministry of Education. Okay, well, please introduce yourself, all from the Ministry of Education.
Avril Rahim, Director Legal, Ministry of Education.
Darlene Smith, Guidance Officer 2, Student Support Services Division.
Leticia Rodriguez Cupid.
Yes.
Coordinator Special Education, Ministry of Education.
Gerard Phillip, Curriculum Officer, Information and Communication Technology.
Okay, thank you.
Teresa Nabas-Skinner, Curriculum Coordinator.
Okay, okay. Yeah, thank you very much, officials of the Ministry of Education. And may I ask any representative or representatives from the National Parent Teachers Association who are here with us this morning?
Good morning, everyone. I am Mrs. Rafina Ali Voodoo Singh, President of the National PTA.
Thank you very much.
Pleasant good morning, Chair and members. My name is Clarence Mendoza, first Vice President of the National Parent Teachers Association.
Thank you very much. And we have one more from NPT.
Good morning, yes. Chair, Sean Campbell, National Education Officer.
Okay.
NPTA.
Thank you very much. And we do have representatives of the Trinidad and Tobago Unified Teachers Association. May I have introductions from TUTA?
Good morning to all members of the committee. Lindsay Edudai, President, Trinidad and Tobago Unified Teachers Association. Thank you.
Good morning to the committee and all gathered. Kula Robertson, Second Vice President of TUTA.
Good morning, everyone. Fitzroy Daniel, General Secretary, TUTA.
Thank you very much, officials. I will, at this point, ask members of the committee to introduce themselves before we begin our full inquiry. And may I start with my right, Senator Amin?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Khadija Amin. I'm an opposition senator, a member of the committee.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Christine Uwalo Hussain, Member of Parliament for Komodo Manzanilla and member of the committee.
Good morning. Brigadier General Ansel Antoine, retired, Member of Parliament, Dabadu Mayor, member.
Esmond Ford, Deputy Speaker, Member of Parliament for Tunapuna and Deputy Chairman of this committee.
Senator, yes? Yes, you, sir. Yes.
Minister in the Ministry of Finance.
Mike, yes. Yes.
Good morning again, all. My name is Glenda Jennings-Smith. I am the Member of Parliament for Tuku Sangre Grande, and I'm a member of this committee.
Thank you very much, MP Jennings-Smith. And I am Dineshwar Mahabir, Chairman of the Committee, Independent Senator. May I ask, when you're responding, to please activate your microphone, and when you are finished, to please deactivate. That is for the recording purposes. At this time, I will ask representatives from the three major, a representative from the three agencies to address us briefly, a brief, hopefully 2-minute opening remarks. And may I start with the Ministry of Education?
Once again, a pleasant good morning. On behalf of the Ministry of Education, I'd like to express thanks for the invitation to participate at this post-inquiry follow-up meeting on the first report into the current level of violence among students in schools, with particular focus on physical and cyberbullying. The team, we met and we reviewed the recommendations and follow-up questions. And we recognize that the committee is focusing mainly on the need for the Ministry of Education to develop and implement a whole school approach which encourages several actors and stakeholders to collaborate to reduce the incidence of violence and indiscipline. The school-based management model is one such mechanism that we have identified to democratize our institutions and to create peaceful spaces in which learning is enhanced and student learning outcomes are achieved. This model primarily focuses on engaging in stakeholders or actors at all levels within the school community. That is, our administrators, middle managers, teachers, non-teaching staff, students, parents, and the general community. We feel that these actors are suitably placed to comprehend the school's context and are charged with assessing, designing, and implementing data-driven strategies to ensure the best learning environment possible. They are, in fact, the first beneficiaries of these peaceful learning environments, and the wider society is the ultimate beneficiary. Further, the ministry continues to partner with its key stakeholders to develop creative and workable solutions aimed at promoting peace in our nation's schools. I thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Representative from from TUTA, Mr. Dudhai.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good morning again to all members of the committee. Firstly, let me say heartfelt thank you to the committee for inviting the Trinidad and Tobago Unified Teachers Association to this sitting of the JSC. TUTA remains deeply concerned about the level of school violence and cyberbullying that continues to take place in our schools. Up to this week, there were reports in the media with respect to incidents of school violence that would have translated onto the streets of our country. The Ministry of Education has been claiming that there has been a decrease with respect to the incidents of school violence in our nation's schools. While we are not here to dispute any statistics on the Ministry of Education, TUTA believes that even one instance of school violence in our nation's schools is too many. We believe that there could be more measures that can be put in place with respect to addressing school violence. One of the critical things that we see that needs to be done in schools is the filling of posts, some of the vacant posts. There are hundreds of vacant posts that have not been filled by the Teaching Service Commission. And more critically, these posts are the what we refer to as the middle management posts in the secondary schools and also the primary schools, but more so in the secondary schools where the critical posts of deans have not been filled. There are hundreds of vacancies. We know for a fact on this side from the Trinidad and Tobago Unified Teachers Association that as far back as June and July of last year, interviews were conducted. However, not one of these positions have been filled to this point in time. So we'll want to zero in on that particular aspect with respect to the filling of vacancies, because that is where some control can be exercised in the school setting with respect to monitoring and supervision of students to possibly prevent this plague of school violence from taking place.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dudai. We will come back to some of those. And a representative from the NPTA, National Parent Teachers Association.
Chairman, today it is a distinct opportunity for the NPTA to stand before this August Joint Select Committee to represent our parent community and to advocate for our children's best interest in the education process. The education process for all of our young people is a journey leading to a quality nation, for the future of our nation lies in the book bags of our children, according to our first Prime Minister, the late Dr. Eric Williams. For this to materialize, we have to take an optimistic, realistic, and practical view. Each stakeholder, passion, integrity, and commitment to the process, so that in the end, all of our future leaders, the children of this nation, would achieve their maximum potential, be culturally and socially adjusted, happy, healthy, and mature, and develop positive moral and ethical values. I am certain that the recommendations outlined by this Joint Select Committee, coupled with stakeholders' partnership, the business of education in Trinidad and Tobago will journey on a successful path.
Thank you very much, Representative from the NPTA, Ms. Budu Singh. As chairman, I would take the opportunity to pose the first question for edification, and afterwards, Senator Amin will start the questioning on behalf of the committee. But my question is really to Mr. Dudai, and the question is this. Whenever I see school violence, I just see it on the media. I am not in the school system itself. Your teachers are on the front lines. Over the last year, have they been reporting to your organization an increase in instances of school violence, a decrease, or has it, in your opinion, has there been a stabilization of instances of violence amongst our school-age population, say over the last year, 2017? I'm trying to get the trend here. Is it that it is escalating, or has it stabilized?
I would say, Mr. Chairman, based on reports that have been coming to the association from our members, that the incidence of school violence continues in our nation's schools.
Okay, so it has not stabilized. It seems to be on the rise then. Or it has remained the same? It is a persistent problem?
I would say it has remained the same.
Right, very well. So may I recommend that you collect statistics, that your teachers once they have seen an instance, can report to your organization so that we have data, hard data to go by to know whether in certain schools there is an increase or a decrease in instances. I think without data, we can only speculate. Is it that your teachers are encouraged, your members are encouraged to report to the organization when they are witnessed some of these violence instances in their classrooms? You see, you are in the first line.
Mr. Chairman, most times members will report to the association when the members of staff are directly affected. So if something happens in a school where it does not affect the teachers with respect to their safety, it may not come to our attention. But when it impacts negatively on them, they would bring it to our attention for our attempts to redress this situation.
Okay, and you have seen, say, on a year-to-year basis, that the reports to your organization have stabilized? Is it that you are getting a fall in reports, a rise in reports, or it has basically stabilized?
I would say it has stabilized.
Very well. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, a follow-up from MP Esmond Ford.
Again, morning again, to the tutor rep. You know, I'm getting from you in terms of the question posed by the chairman, in that you all don't have hard evidence, statistics before you that you could present to the committee. I'm hearing that your membership submit information, teachers report cases, but hard evidence that could be on document to say, well, look, at this particular school, this particular day, X took place. At that particular school, Y took place. You all don't have those statistics.
We don't have empirical data, if that's what you're asking. What we have reports that come to the association on a day-to-day basis with respect to...
But Mr. Buddha, I think from the organization where you sit, I think this is definitely, you need empirical evidence in order to justify the case, because you made in your opening remark that decrease in violence in school has not taken place, and you were sort of stating that the Ministry of Education is saying one thing, you are saying something else. And I hope that when we come to the Ministry of Education, they would have evidence to say, listen, this is what has been happening 2005, 2015, 2016, 2017, and as we're going forward, right? You made a strong statement, and I'm saying you must be able to justify what you have said in order to let the committee know, listen, this is the information, and you are combating what the Ministry of Education is saying. I am of the opinion you all need to work together, tutor, NPTA, Ministry of Education, in order to ensure that this serious thing that we are dealing with have to be reduced, have to come to an end.
Thank you very much, MP Ford. But a follow-up, before I come to you, Senator, to the Ministry of Education, are principals mandated to record instances of violence in their schools? A response from the Ministry of Education. Are they mandated to collect that statistics?
Good morning again, Chair. Principals have been mandated to collect such information and to submit through school supervision to the Office of the CEO.
Collecting that data?
We have collected. We have some data for the last year.
Okay. And I will request then that you submit the information to the Secretariat, because that would be valuable to guide the work of the committee. And we will also share that information with the public as well.
Mr. Chair?
A follow-up on this one? Yeah, okay, right.
I want to know whether that data collected is public data. And when I say public data, is that data available to tutor?
It can be made available to tutor.
Was there ever an instance where they made a request for data and was refused?
I can't recall.
And I will ask Senator Amin to ask her direct question. These were all preliminaries. These were just setting the stage. Now the real questions are coming.
Thank you very much. I know, Mr. Chairman, it may seem as though we are beginning in the middle, but this is in fact a post-inquiry follow-up on a previous meeting that we had concerning the current level of violence in schools among students. And today, I think it's important for us to look at the element of violence against teachers and staff as well. What I want to ask is a more general or holistic question in terms of an indication from the minister in the Parliament in response to a question in the lower house in this month of January 2018, when the minister was asked to indicate the actions initiated by the ministry to curtail bullying in secondary school, and his response dealt with violence on a whole. And he indicated that the ministry has developed a national strategy for addressing students in discipline in schools. My question to you is, has this national policy been documented? And what are some of the key components of this national strategy?
The information I have, member, is that we have in all schools the establishment of school discipline plans. But it doesn't stop there. We have discipline plans that extend at the level of the education district and at the level of the Ministry of Education as well. So the school discipline plans are the discipline committees, at the district levels, there will be 7 of them here in Trinidad, and they are mandated to meet and to oversee disciplinary measures within each education district. At the school level, the schools, both primary and secondary schools, they are asked to meet on a regular basis. We recommend monthly, but some schools have chosen termly, and they have been meeting to address their issues.
And in terms of your stakeholder involvement, what is the component of these disciplinary committees? Are your stakeholders involved? Like tutor, for instance?
We have recommended that the various stakeholders be engaged, including the student body and the student councils in the schools.
But are they, in fact, now members of those disciplinary committees?
I would think so.
Maybe if we could get a response from tutor.
But also, when was this national strategy implemented? And I place it back to MP, to Senator Amin. When was it actually implemented, and was it documented? Because I haven't seen any documentation.
Chair, all this has dovetailed from our school-based management approach, where schools are being encouraged to be part and parcel of developing strategies to address challenges that may emerge. What we have in the school-based management is that various subcomponents of that approach would have been dealing with things like school discipline, and those committees would have been part of that whole governance structure.
Yeah, tutor, if I would like to ask tutor and NPTA, specifically, if you're aware of this discipline matrix and the discipline plan. Yeah, this is a follow-up question, sir.
Good morning, member. While we are aware of what the ministry had put in place, what we can say is that my colleague over there indicated that each school is expected to have this committee. What we know is that many of them don't include the staff rep at the schools, and some of them are not functional, and case in point, don't report to the general staff. We have one such school this morning where I expect a school supervisor too is visiting that school to investigate a matter of abuse by a student to a teacher and several other issues. And the staff complaint is that they have not been getting any feedback from administration at the school, nor are the 2 reps there involved in that committee that should be set up.
I just want to come back to the original question. Is it, are you aware of the matrix, the discipline matrix? Do you know how it functions? Do you know who is involved? Do you know what the plan entails? Are you aware of it? Do you know? Can you tell me at the back of your hand, this is what it is, A, B, C, D, E, F, G?
Good morning again, specifically Mrs. Hossain. I know from school to school, you have discipline matrix. And these discipline matrix, yes, they are implemented on a school-to-school basis, but you have management problem in the school, and it's how it is implemented, because I can recall going to a secondary school back in 2000, we had a document which was a system for implementing a school-based matrix. However, it was never properly implemented. It was just there. And sometimes you'll question the principal as to whether, this is the approach or not. But most times it is, there are some schools and it is documented, yes.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
And after MP Alison West, we will have Mrs. Generating, we will have Brigadier Ansel Antwine, and after Brigadier Ansel Antwine, we will have Ms. Jennings Smith. So, yes. Okay, Parent Teachers Association, after which I will follow with Senator West.
The National PTA, we would touch base with our affiliated PTAs. What I can tell you in our meetings, we realize that many of our members are unaware of the school-based management committees in schools because most times the principal doesn't inform the PTA, and also if there's a parent representative on the PTA, most times the principal chooses that parent. So there is no liaising between the school-based management team and the PTA to know what is going on. And we have done training with our affiliated PTAs on school-based management from an official from the Ministry of Education. So our parents will be aware of it. But PTAs that are not affiliated to us, we would know what is really going on. But we do know that sometimes even the local school board, which is another arm that helps with the improvement of the schools, and they would strategize and partner with discipline plans and so on. We know for a fact that sometimes we have 2 parent representatives on the local school board and 1 on the school-based management committee. And sometimes they are unaware that the PTA elects these representatives and not the principal. So sometimes the communication breaks down to know what is really going on in the school. Because even with the discipline plan, it should be a stakeholder conversation so everyone knows what is going on. Right?
And PTA, but we do have a follow-up from Minister West.
Thank you, Chair. To the Ministry of Education rep, I get the sense that you instruct the teachers through the school-based management system to design and implement this disciplinary policy. But do you have a system of checks and balances so you follow up, you ensure uniformity, you ensure that the design of the policy is adequate for the needs and that the principals or whoever is implementing are actually doing what they're supposed to do?
The system that the Ministry of Education has in place is where schools are required to develop their own school development plans. And these school development plans are to be monitored it is to be submitted and to be viewed by the school supervisors. So yes, we have that mandate that they prepare the school development plans, and we know that some schools are more advanced in where they are in the process, obviously. But our school supervisors are the ones who will have the first view of it and to guide them in terms of having something that we see as workable.
May I add?
Yes.
At the level of the ministry and under the office of the CEO, we have an officer who has been designated, and that person is responsible for for the whole school-based management rollout. And a strategy has been developed, and that has been documented. And that officer, along with the schools, the district officers, have been rolling out the plans to schools. And we have those SBM teams, at least this is the information that comes to me, because we were looking at it and we were looking at the model, and that is how it's rolled out. At this point, we would have had in Trinidad the 444 primary schools and the 125 secondary schools presenting their school development plans, which would have been developed, as far as I'm aware, and I have the team of persons who would have been part of that exercise. So this is it. And all of the plans are looked at the level of the ministry to ensure the compliance, as well as at the district level.
Okay, thank you very much. Brigadier Antoine has not been with us for a bit. He has to come in after Glenda Jennings-Smith, MP, and then again we come back. And we are still on the principal point raised by Senator Amin. So we have a number of follow-ups coming up, yes.
Yes, good morning again. I'm dealing with the ministry's written response in terms of disciplinary committees. They said that there are 7 disciplinary committees in each district, and there are disciplinary committees in the primary and secondary schools. I wanted to find out what is the reporting relationship. So a disciplinary committee in a primary school, let's say in Laventille, or let's say down in Separia, has a disciplinary problem. What is the reporting relationship? It goes up to who in the Ministry of Education, and how does the Ministry of Education respond to this, and how does it bring it back to the school through the principal, through the PTA, through the tutor to deal with a disciplinary matter? What is the process that you're undertaking to deal with a disciplinary matter from one of your disciplinary committees?
Thank you very much for your question, member. The oversight of this school is the responsibility of the line school supervisor, so that when a disciplinary issue emerges which cannot be addressed at the level of the, cannot be addressed at the level of the school, through the school supervisor, principal reporting to the school supervisor, it comes to the level of the district, where the interdivisional disciplinary committee would review the issue and provide to the school guidance in addressing the issue, or, if necessary, refer it further so that the situation can be addressed. So essentially the line of reporting and the line of oversight is provided through school supervision.
And how is this information disseminated to tutor and to the PTA? If it is a matter involving a teacher or student interaction in terms of discipline?
Through the stakeholder engagement meetings, which take place generally either at the level of the district or at the strategic level, depending on the level of severity. At the level of the district, most districts will meet with their stakeholders. The district, for example, with tutor, the district field officer would have that engagement, generally monthly. And if there is not resolution at level, it would then go up to the strategic level where it is addressed. So there's that ongoing interaction and coordination.
And because we have both tutor and the PTA present, is this your experience? And what is your experience in terms of these matters? If I could get feedback from you all, please.
While I agree that there may be some interaction, but most time it is at the back end issue of the issue. So in terms of the planning, the whole strategic planning, we would hear, yes, there are systems in place, but we come in at the back end when there's an issue at the school, then we are involved. Then it means that we have to treat with the issue.
Thank you very much. We will get the PTA, and afterwards I do have to get Jennings-Smith, MP Jennings-Smith, and then we come back to Deputy Speaker. It will come back to you, Deputy Speaker, but MP Jennings, the PTA, then MP Jennings-Smith. A response from the PTA?
Yeah, member, as far as I know, there is no district committee made up of stakeholders that oversee the discipline plans or the discipline matrix in schools. And very ironic, I had that in my notes to recommend today, that we do have a committee like that in each district so that, you know, we can curb the violence in schools, because there, as far as I know, there is no committee like that in the district. We do not meet monthly or weekly. The NPTA doesn't receive any information from the district level with reference to violence or indiscipline in the schools.
Very much, and to tutor, I would recommend if you could also send recommendations to the committee so that your own involvement can be enhanced in this very important exercise. So we will get the recommendations from your organization as well as to the NPTA. I will ask MP Jennings-Smith to come in at this time.
I wanted to ask, but I'll ask the PTA as the last. Can you tell me how formalized are your groups of PTAs? And tell me how many groups of PTAs you have in Trinidad and Tobago operationalized. How formalized are these groups?
We have approximately 300 PTAs affiliated to us. And right now, this new executive is on a drive to increase our membership. But we are very structured because the NPTA, at the base, we have the units, and the units will form the regions, which is, you know, in sync with the education districts. So we have 8 regions. And then from that, we have the central executive, the general council, and conference of delegates. We do meet our units and regions on a monthly basis, so that at our meetings, we will receive information about schools, what is happening in the schools, how parents are affected, what is happening with our children. As you see right now, this new executive, we are mentoring a child right now. Mr. Mendoza is acting as big brother to that child because that child is undergoing extreme trauma in this school, not attending school, so we are trying to help wherever we can help. We touch base with the schools, so right now we have a school where we are attending. A teacher is absent for months because the teacher is a reserved Army officer, just gets a letter and goes out, and there's no replacement for the teacher, and the teacher is in a standard 4 class. So we have been on the ground, and we have been listening, and we are trying to help wherever possible.
So I can say that most of your PTAs, they have at least 50 parents attending meetings regularly every time meetings are called.
Well, it will fluctuate because we have small schools, we have medium-sized schools, we have big schools.
I'm just trying to establish, sometimes we make claims that the PTA is not in the mix, but then when you go to the schools, maybe you don't have the parents' interests in terms of being consistently present at PTA meetings. And now I'm coming to the other point, and this is going to the ministry. Now, the minister said that in his reply, it is data-driven. And I want to ask you all, this program, did you develop this program from any best practice internationally? Because when you talk about punishment, it could be either retributive or restorative. And I know when we're dealing with children, you're dealing with young minds, which could be tamed to a different way. And what we are having in society, what we are turning out, a lot of anger, hatred, and stuff like that. I didn't hear the word restorative justice or conferencing in the school system, but I am seeing a program which is data-led, data-driven. I want to know something more. What influenced this particular program?
If I may say, member, I know a lot of research has gone into the preparation and implementation of this initiative. I don't have the actual data before me, but I know a lot of research went into it in terms of examining best practices, as you asked, and in terms of doing the research itself to work with data on the ground. But I can't say that I can provide you with anything more than that at this point.
You see, Mr. Chairman, you talk about districts and district supervisors. What guides the district supervisors when they are liaising with those districts with respect to dealing with discipline and maintaining discipline and dealing with violence in school? What guides them? And it is not spelled out here. What I need to know is what guides them? How do they advise? Or what? And coming from my colleague across the floor, he spoke about how do you implement? How do you operationalize? What guides? Like, for example, long time, a child commits an offense or whatever, and a teacher would say, well, licks for you. Or another one, they would say, I'll call in your parent. Or they would say, listen, we need to talk to you for a period of time. Licks, you can't apply, well, licks is nothing that we talk about again. That's a long time thing. So now we talk about restorative justice, we talk about conferencing with children, and we talk about retributive, where you all say dismissal from school and stuff like that. But what guides the ultimate action?
Yes, Mrs. Jennings, honorable member. Now, the school-based management is, we look at a holistic approach in that it is about the curriculum, it's about peace, but it's also about looking at your school development plans, which looks even at your academic performance. It assesses where the school is at, and whatever the gaps are in terms of filling, that is what the school will be school has to identify remedial strategies. Now, with respect to the restorative justice, I'm going to ask Ms. Darlene Smith, who, from the School Student Support Services, to provide you some additional information with respect to how it all comes together in that regard. Yes.
Good morning, member. Within Ministry of Education, as our peers we've stated, we do take a holistic approach of our interventions regarding violence. From the reports that we would have submitted to you, restorative justice is part of our Learning Enhancement Center's approach in our interventions that we do with students. And it is a critical part of what we do because, as you know, we must and we do recognize that students can change, behaviors can be modified. And through the support of our school social workers, guidance officers, our clinical psychologists, behavioral specialists, and special ed teachers, we do the assessments necessary to begin treatment and interventions, taking into regard the family backgrounds, the behavior, the academic performance, as more importantly, the academic goals for each child.
Chairman, so there's a role for the parents and the parent-teacher body. Can you safely say here that you are satisfied with the responses you get from the parents and the parent-teachers body?
Well, while we work with the parents, we do not necessarily interact with the NPTA, right? We do collaborate at various, I have in the past worked with the NPTA in doing training for some of their staff and their various units on Saturdays. I've personally attended and executed training sessions. What we do in SSSD would be more interacting through our parenting education programs with parents to help to do the necessary support while we do the rehabilitation and interventions with all students.
I need to intervene, and the question is, do you get the full cooperation of parents when they are requested to come to the committee and comply with certain guidelines and advice that you give? Or is it that you find reluctance from parents or guardians, caregivers, to participate in the programs?
It has been a mixed approach. What we recognize is that in some districts, we get the parent support, while in some other areas and some communities, there is some resistance. However, when that occurs, we do the second step, which is home-to-home visits, and we do go out and try to seek and find the parents where necessary. That is critical in terms of our intervention. In our strategic approach to treating with violence and indiscipline in schools, we recognize that it is a five-pronged approach whereby we working with the parents, society, community, relational individuals, but we recognize there's also an interministerial approach required to addressing and treating with violence and indiscipline in schools.
Yeah, and this is a follow-up that on the discussion that went prior to my colleague, MP Jennings Smith. In terms of the relationship and the communication process between the three bodies represented here today. Right? I am sitting here and I am of the opinion that the relationship and the communication with regards to the topic on discussion, right? We're discussing violence and bullying in schools. I am of the impression, and you all will be given the opportunity each to say whether my opinion is wrong or whether it is factual. I am thinking that the relationship with regards to this particular topic and the communication process is poor among the three bodies represented here today. All right? I made a couple jottings. NPTA mentioned touch base. You know what I mean? I think if we really try to look at when we say touch base, you know, it don't happen regularly. Tutor mentioned, well, we sometimes. Well, we sometimes. While I agree, tutor again, as far as I know, NPTA mentioned that. Those are not definitive statements, right, in terms of the communication process that's taking place for a very important topic like this. So with regards to, in the particular order, NPTA first, tutor second, Ministry of Education third. Sorry to put you all in the spot, but I need to be clear. How is the relationship process and communication process with regards to school violence among the body? So NPTA, how would you rate the relationship and the communication process among with regards to school violence?
We will be aware of the instances of violence in schools if our parents call us and inform us, and sometimes it's only when it reaches the media we would know about it. However, we do have meetings with the Minister of Education and his staff at least once a term. And
that's a general meeting, or is it on violence alone?
No, a general meeting. Okay. But we will, you know, ask for information on the violence and indiscipline. And just at our last meeting in January, we had with the Honorable Minister Garcia, he informed us that suspensions have been on the decrease. So if that is an indication that the indiscipline and violence is decreasing in the schools.
Are you of the opinion that a critical thing like this should have a separate meeting and apart? Like a meeting on violence in schools? Are you of that opinion?
Yes, I am of that opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Because what we believe is that all stakeholders have to come together to discuss that and to bring remedy to it.
Okay. Tutor, how would you rate communication relationship with violence? I'm not talking about anything else. Violence in schools.
I would say the relationship is not very good with respect to this particular issue. While we meet on other issues and other areas with respect to violence and indiscipline, most times when a discussion takes place, it's after something has happened and we are trying to remedy a situation in a particular school. But with regards to the strategic plan that you all talk about and so on, you all are not part of that process and so on? No, sir. Right. Ministry of Education, how would you rate? Again, same answer.
Vice Chair, I would say that at the level of the school, all stakeholders, as we are aware, are engaged. The PTA at the school would be engaged. They have been mandated to be part of the discipline committees. The tutor representative, we expect them to be part of it, but we note that at the district level, the district committee, discipline committee, as it presently stands, is involving ministry officials. And we take the recommendation that was made sometime earlier that perhaps we should engage the stakeholders at that level.
That's from Mr. Chairman.
One last follow-up before we go to MP Nawal Hussain. Yes.
And again, as mentioned by NPT and also tutor, they know after the fact, unless it's aired in the media, or unless a parent tells them. Again, from where I sit, I was of the belief, or I would want to think, that again, something as critical as this, that they will be notified accordingly, that they will be part of the discussion, right? Members of tutor, you all are teachers?
Yes, sir, we are.
right? And NPTA, you all are not teachers, not necessarily teachers, right? Right? And I am thinking is that there must be some collaboration. You know what I mean? We hearing about school violence every day. You know what I mean? You read the papers. I think, you know.
Thank you very much, member. We now get the drift that there is a need for closer collaboration, and we have gotten it today, that the stakeholders need to communicate. And communication is easy now, electronic communication. There is no good reason why all stakeholders cannot be kept abreast of developments, untoward developments, favorable developments. We will come back to the question, yes, after Mr. Dudai has made his contribution, MP Niwalu Hussein has to get in again on a follow-up before we go back to the question posed by Senator Amin. So, Mr. Dudai.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to make a short contribution based on the question asked by Ms. Jennings-Smith with respect to restorative justice. The representative of the Ministry of Education, Ms. Smith, Guidance Officer 2, would have spoken about the involvement of the Student Support Services Division with respect to the use of restorative justice with respect to violence and indiscipline in schools. From our side, we would want to submit that the Student Support Services Division is understaffed to deal with the current numbers of issues that are coming to the fore, and therefore, well, of course, we want to call for a beefing up in terms of the numbers of the Student Support Services Division. Failing that, we believe that training should be given to teachers with respect to restorative justice, because they are the first line persons in contact with the students, and they are the ones who can implement or use the tool of restorative justice. And I just wanted to point out that tutor would have recognized the importance of restorative justice, and we would have partnered with the American Federation of Teachers in June of 2017, where they would have come to Trinidad, and we would have exposed 40 of our teachers, 5 from each of the 8 educational districts, to restorative justice. And they were asked to go back to their schools and expose their fellow members of staff to what would have been shared with them at that particular 2-day training.
But and I myself have some concerns with teacher training and so on, since many of your teachers are going to be females, I'd imagine, who would have to be in the presence of some of these violent acts, and I'm concerned about the welfare and what that can have with respect to entry into the teaching service. Is violence and the incidence of violence a deterrent to getting high-quality persons to enter the teaching service? So some of those issues will come subsequently, but I want to ask MP Niwalu Hussein to pose her follow-up before I go back to Senator Amin.
Thank you, Chair. In concurring with MP Ford, I would like to say that there is a definite disconnect, as we could see. And my question is, it goes back to what Mr. Thompson had said earlier, indicating that the principal would write to the school supervisor advising that there is a problem. So a physical report comes in. Is there anything prohibits, is there any law or policy that prohibits the supervisor, the principal, from in fact copying the report to tutor to indicate, look, this problem is being submitted to the Ministry of Education, so that everyone is on the same page and that they can have some follow-up action so that there's no disconnect? Is there any policy prohibiting that the principal from copying that report? That's the first question.
Honorable Member, thank you. There may be issues of confidentiality arising, so even if the report may not be copied, certainly some form of notification can be done so as to inform tutor and so on. Perhaps not so much the content or copying of the primary report, until we know like what kind of information would be in it and that sort of thing.
Can you advise if there has been any indication that that a principal cannot or teacher cannot advise you of certain things that take place in the schools that may affect their own ability to execute the performance of their duties efficiently and effectively?
Member, we are unaware of any such legislation that prevents a principal from sharing that information.
Tutor, do you receive any reports from teachers indicating that they're stating that they experience fear and that they're intimidated in the execution of their duties? And how, if you do, how do you deal with those reports?
Remember, that is almost a weekly report that comes to the IR department. At times, we would advise the teachers to go through the proper procedure, which is to have, we would send out our field officers or district executives to have conferencing with the principals of those schools. And when we can't address it at that level, certainly we then attempt to speak with the DSS or the CEO or somebody to have those matters addressed. There are a number of reports that involve teachers having to make reports to the police station that we also come by regularly.
Are these reports able to give you enough data to determine what is happening within the schools? Because, I mean, this comes as empirical evidence as far as I mean, if a teacher brings a complaint of something that is happening and they have to actually make a report to the police, doesn't this supply you with the empirical evidence to provide data to indicate that you need to speak to the ministry as to how we go forward? I mean, yes, you made a point that you need to put in more deans, you need to fill the positions, which amount to hundreds, but it's not just a matter of filling positions, it's also how do you proceed with how you manage the discipline. How do you go with restorative justice? Because you can have persons in there, but if you don't have a proper matrix, how do you implement the procedures that are necessary to bring down the level of violence and bullying in the schools?
Okay, member, I'm going to have to say, while we have the information, I don't think we have probably collated it and put it together, but it's something that we certainly can work on with the reports and the files that we do have in our Industrial Relations Department of Tutor.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, and I want to go back to the whole restorative justice approach because it is called conferencing. It is something that is a school conferencing, community conferencing, and it is known to be a highly effective process. Now, listening to Mr. Dudai, it seemed to me as though we were on that right track some time ago, and the persons were actually trained. But somewhere along the line, it may be seemingly, it was never followed up and measured. Because we talk evidence-based and we talk data and we talk all these nice words. But if we had a process, did we put it in place? Did we measure it to see if it could have been successful? Because we are talking about changing a whole culture that seems to be invading our school system. This whole hate, anger, how do we control hate and anger among students? And this is a program which has been tested and tried in other countries, like Australia, which is a peaceful nation. And have we tested it? So we could say now that 100 students engage in that process in these schools. And what has happened since then to now? Was it successful? So we can maybe change the strategy and say it cannot work here and change it and say we'll do something else. I want to know if that actually happened and we remove ourselves from that because seemingly we don't have enough teachers. We don't have enough deans. We don't have the people in the schools to even initiate that conferencing process with the students. So I need to get some answers on that.
Yes, Permanent Secretary, yes.
A point of clarification. Now, in the Ministry of Education, you have posts that are vacant. For example, you would listen and you would have acting and acting. They are vacant with bodies. Yes? So that you have in the school system. Now, I did not work with the data with respect to deans and heads of departments and senior teachers, but we have persons who are actually performing the duties. And we know that, as Mr. Duda indicated, that we had the interviews conducted through the TSC, the Teaching Service Commission. But it is not that all of the positions would be vacant, because I know that for a fact. But the thing about it, I did not walk with the information to tell you how many deans that were disciplined we have in our school, but there are positions that are vacant with bodies. But if you look on the establishment, you would see vacant because they are not substantive holders. The positions have been advertised and they will be subsequently filled. But we have persons, I'm sure, because you are all the teachers and you have, who would know that we have teachers who are in those positions. So on a point of clarification before we move ahead, and that it is that we do not have persons, it is that in the government systems, you have persons who are in the positions, but they are not the substantive holders. So you write that with bodies. All right, vacant with bodies and vacant without bodies.
Chairman, I haven't got the answer. I'm asking you to tell me how many people.
Yes,
yeah.
But I'm okay. Ms. Smith will respond.
Very well. I need to move on. We have had a long round. We will come back. Yes, we will come back to some of these follow-up issues. But I would like to get back to Senator Amin and for her to raise another substantive question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I think it's safe for us to conclude out this round that there is a deficiency in the policy with regards to the whole school-based management approach and the engagement of stakeholders, because it seems that the stakeholder participation is an ad hoc engagement. It doesn't seem that I have not gotten a definitive answer, but it doesn't seem to be a part of the policy that the stakeholders, specific stakeholders are involved, for instance, that they comprise certain committees, and there are recommendations for instance, who should sit on committees. And I want to recommend that these stakeholders be named and that they comprise the committees. So, for example, you have your regional district discipline committee, the school management, the school-based management teams, if there are committees there, that it must be mandatory for example, tutor to have a representative on this committee, national PTA, and any other significant stakeholders who are identified. Mr. Chairman, my next issue actually has to do with what was mentioned by the Permanent Secretary. And this committee is actually in the process of considering a proposal for an inquiry on the state of contract employment in the public service because of that same complaint that you made in terms of vacancies. In our initial inquiry into school-based violence, we had a number of guidance counselors, deans, and other persons involved in the counseling aspect of schools, and we recognize that there's a significant shortage. The ratio of the number of students to guidance counselor, for example, they are significantly overburdened. We had sometimes one person dealing with 3 and 4 large secondary schools, populations ranging between 700 and 1,500, where the ratio ought to be about 300 to 1. Can we have, from your, perhaps begin with the Permanent Secretary, to indicate to us what is the prevalence of the shortage of staff to deal with discipline problems in schools, and I mean in a preventative manner as well, in terms of providing counseling and so on. Your system with guidance counselors and all the other positions, if you can name them and indicate to us the challenges with the staffing to begin with, as well as the resources.
The response is the deficit that you have. There is a deficit, a staff deficit, yes.
With apologies. The deficit I would ask the officers from the Student Support Services to provide, but what I know is that we have been making a lot of attempts to fill the positions, and we have advertised, and we would have received quite a lot of applications for both guidance counselors, which would have been the contract. There's a difference between the contract and the established positions, which would have been the guidance counselors and the school social workers. And we were processing and doing the shortlisting. We also have, we made representation to the DPA with respect to the filling of the established positions. But in terms of the deficit, I would ask...
Yes, you are working.
Yes, we are working, but I'm just going... do you require the information now with the deficit?
Not now. We can get it in writing.
So you can get it in writing?
But during our initial inquiry, a recommendation was offered that there ought to be a ratio of, I think, 250 students to 1 social worker. What I would like to know is how close are you to satisfying that particular ratio? That seemed to have been the consensus from the ancillary support staff with respect to efficiently solving the problem. That was a short-term recommendation. It seemed to be something that was necessary. It addresses the concerns of Mr. Dudai that there seems to be deficits in certain critical areas. Are you close to the 1 to 250, or are you far from it? Or how many more staff members do you need to get to that optimum ratio from the people in the know from the back? Yeah. If you're not close, you're not close, right?
Chairman, we would have begun interviews for school social workers last week, and so at this point in time, our staff in terms of social workers and guidance counselors and some of our special ed teachers are on month-to-month contract.
No. Optimally, the ratio we were told is 1 for 250 maximum. Could you give us an indication of what the current ratio is in the school system in Trinidad and Tobago?
With regards to social workers, it will be approximately 1 to 6. Sorry, so 1 to 600.
So yes. we basically need to expand the population by about 50% to get to the 1 to 300.
That will be correct.
Very well. This is critical information because these were recommendations that we made about a year ago, and we are not seeing much traction. But I will ask Minister West to come in. Is there a follow-up, a burning follow-up?
Inquire. You said 1 to 600, right? How many, what is the population in one school? Yeah, and the population in the school, meaning how many students? And how many deans or counselors are assigned to how many number of schools? In other words, is it that 1 dean per school, or is it that the deans or the counselors or the psychologists are roving? The social workers, are they roving? So,
Member, in the secondary schools, we have some officers, 1 per secondary school, but the vast majority of them, for example, in primary, they are roving, so they address a cluster of schools. So it's approximately 1 to 3 or 1 to 3 schools or 1 to 6 schools, as I indicated earlier, based on the size of the districts and the shortfall in staffing in some of our districts. So it varies from in numbers. With respect to deans, I will let the DSS answer that question.
So therefore, the earlier answer where you indicated that is 1 to 600 mean?
That's a general in terms if we look at the total population of students in these schools.
Therefore, a very important statistic, it means that the establishment ought to recruit about 50% more than what it currently has. So, yeah, I would now ask Minister West, and I want to emphasize she is not with the Ministry of Education. Minister West is with the Ministry of Finance. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to change gears a little bit and look at the issue of cyberbullying. In the report that I read, it seemed that the ministry's focus was in respect of control of the availability and use of cell phones. So if that is correct, can you give me some detail on what your policy is with respect to cell phones? And secondly, have you gone or are you going beyond that to deal with legislation, if that is necessary, setting policies and guidelines in respect of cyberbullying?
Request Mr. Philip will respond to that question. Mr. Philip.
Member, the Ministry of Education does have a mobile cell phone policy, but it also has policy that speaks to cyberbullying, and it speaks policy that speaks to responsible use, and policy that speaks to students' general maintenance of integrity and the preservation of the digital footprint when using social media and the internet. In particular, the cell phone policy is one that allows or facilitates teachers to maximize the use of these devices for teaching and learning. The ministry sees these devices as imperative for keeping step with technology and for maximizing the power and potential of these devices. In particular, though, we stress responsible use, especially when it leads to or references discipline and violence. So the three-pronged approach, as identified in our policy, speaks to, first off, ensuring that students maintain an identity that's observable when using the internet, and that they, in turn, have open relationships with their peers and teachers in a manner that can be tracked and followed in an official manner. So we have in our policy then, in our social media policy, conditions that speak to teachers, administrators, having clear and finite guidelines that determine how they interact with students, such that principals and administrators must be aware of the sites that are being perused or the social media platform that they're using, and that parents as well are privy to what is being exposed or how students are being exposed to those particular social media. We also speak to the laws of Trinidad and Tobago, and the policy stresses, first off, a zero tolerance approach to any infraction in terms of areas and instances where students and or teachers may utilize this media that would contravene the laws of Trinidad and Tobago. So having said that then, the policy, and when a copy of the policy was made available to the panel, the policy goes to finite detail in a strategic way and allows schools in turn to operationalize those policies according to their various environments.
Question on that, and that is with respect to cyberbullying, because these electronic devices are the basic media which would be used to engage in that kind of activity. If a student if it has been determined that a student has engaged in cyberbullying of another student, do you have a policy with respect to removing his cell phone or ensuring that he does not have this device in school? Do you have a policy for that particular problem?
Madam Chairman, we speak to that issue strategically. And the policy goes quite clear in speaking, first off, to zero tolerance to any infraction and adherence to the laws of Trinidad and Tobago, but it allows operational policies to be developed at the level of the school. So while the ministry's ICT in education cyberbullying policy gives overarching strategic guidelines, schools are given that leeway to make their operational policies at their level. As in a case, an example, there are some schools that would take away or confiscate the cell phones when students enter in the morning and give it back to them in the afternoon. There are other schools that use other means or other strategies, and that may be the purview of the school in terms of keeping in line with the ministry's policy, but having their own operational policies at the school level.
A follow-up on that, Chair. You said that the policy contemplates adherence to the existing laws of Trinidad and Tobago. Has the ministry done an assessment of whether the existing laws are adequate for the purpose of control of the issues and whether you should be making recommendations for change of those laws?
Remember, there has been, in February of last year, 2017, officers of the ministry met with the police service and an interministerial team that sought to further the discussion on cybercrime and, by extension, cyberbullying, not in schools only, but in the community at large. That particular approach has been ongoing, although that particular committee has not yet met since that initial meeting. But we have been liaising with our own legal department at the ministry, and we have factored in the existing laws as we know it to ensure that, that principals and administrators are guided by those laws as they encourage and facilitate the use of digital devices in schools.
Thank you very much. I want to have a follow-up with tutor on that issue. And I don't want to get sidetracked, but cyberbullying is part of the problem as well. Have your teachers reported to you that the use of these electronic devices in schools is really disrupting the teaching process in any significant way?
Mr. Chairman, the reports that we have had from our members do, in fact, support what you are saying, that the use of these devices have a negative impact on the teacher and learning process, and it does, in fact, disrupt the process.
Recommendation to make to the committee, please do so. Could be, as was indicated prior, that the devices are placed in a secure place in the morning, given back in the afternoon, and they are not held on the person during the classroom hours. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, while the phones and other electronic devices create problems sometimes during the school day, it doesn't really start all the time at the school, because there's no control that the teacher has when the child is at home, because many of the physical violence stems from the cyberbullying that starts sometimes months before, and that happens when the children are at home a number of times. So, or well, the after-school hours, which teachers have no control. There's also a concern. Some schools, as the gentleman indicated, teachers collect these phones. Sometimes we have an issue with that, because there have been times when teachers have been made liable and have to replace phones for students, because students come and complain that something is missing or it's not working. I know you may not know, because a teacher may just collect a phone that may actually come in dead, but it may be an attempt to get that person to have a new device. Now, we're not saying that the phone should not be allowed in the school, because there are also reports of where phones have been used positively to help enhance a particular lesson or so at the school. So we would, in fact, look at the...
Much for that intervention. And maybe then the solution would have to be that cyberbullying has to be made into a crime. Cyberbullying, if it is made into a criminal offense, and we can track the IP addresses of the cyber bully, then a criminal offense has been committed, and that particular offender can be made to answer for his infraction of the law. MP Jennings-Smith, you had a follow-up?
I just want to say I agreed with the second Vice President, because it is a message that is sent through your phone. Cyberbullying, it happens anytime. And when you give back the students the phone, they could receive a threat. And what I want to ask is, what is the school doing to initiate a program to say that it is intolerable and unacceptable in the schools? And, you know, something that happens in this country is that a lot of people do things, and the consequences of their action, how do we deal with them? Is there a consequence to the students' action, what they did? I believe maybe they will be handed over to the police, because it could be investigated. And I think it's an issue that is a burden issue worldwide, and very challenging in coming up with strategies.
We will have to be looking at whether cyberbullying as a criminal offense is punishable or should be made to be punishable, and that individuals, whatever their age, who engage in this type of action would be committing a criminal offense. We'd have to be looking at that. The response of the ministry or the stakeholders on this particular issue, since this seems now to be perhaps one of the triggers and the generators of what we are seeing. You see, it is not a surprise to me that the incidence of school violence is correlated with the rise of the use of electronic devices. I'm not saying it is causing it, but it is correlated. And since it is correlated, there may very well be, from my perspective, the need to look at criminalizing the abuse of the technology. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Just before I continue with my question, I just wanted to ask the NPTA on how do you, as a body, look at cyberbullying, and what are your suggestions as to how do you circumvent this type of behavior?
We have discussed the use of cell phones in school. We have asked our parents, why is it necessary for you to give your child a phone to go to school, and especially a very expensive phone with all the features on it? Most times they will indicate, well, I want to know where my child is, especially when school is dismissed, because of the violence in society and the social ills. And we discussed it, and we did discuss this with the Minister of Education also, that I do not see the necessity of the child using the phone for education purpose in the schools. So what we suggested is that we look for a phone that is just able to call. Not all the fancy features, and that will diminish the cyberbullying. A very simple phone, and we say, okay, let us get a provider for the phone, and the parents buy that particular phone, because it is a complex situation that we need to look for a solution. And it is an added responsibility when these children have the phones with all the features. It's an added responsibility for the teachers in school to be looking at the students and the use of the phone. And most times they wouldn't use it during class time. And we know that teachers, although they have duty of care, we have teachers who, choose not to exercise duty of care in the schools, especially at lunchtime.
Okay.
Right? And this is, so we are saying is it necessary for the children to have these phones in school? And if it is necessary, why not just have a simple phone? And the students should also be taught cell phone etiquette.
Well, just I'm looking at your colleagues' heads and indicating that it's not going to work, and it's not going to work because, of course, cyberbullying does not start and end at school. And there's a point that was raised earlier by MP Jennings-Smith about the anger and the hate, and I will add unforgiveness. And the reason why I'm stating that is because of the fact that a lot of this type of bullying takes place because there's a lot of anger, a lot of hate, and a lot of unforgiveness, and it doesn't stem from school, it stems from the home. And this is why I think it's important for the NPTA to become more involved in what happens at home, not just what takes place in school, because what happens in school is just a manifestation of what takes place at the home.
Could I follow up with maybe aim at a solution? Because I think that's a very valuable question. Where the home fails, the state institution called the school may have to compensate. And I'm simply wondering whether in terms of the curriculum, you see, in our last hearing, we did recommend that we focus on things like multiple intelligences. We're not going to only emphasize the physics, chemistry, math, but creativity, the arts, talents, and so on, so that the outlets are there for students of different intelligences to exploit. And from the perspective of the Ministry of Education, do you have, as a matter of education policy, courses in interpersonal relations, courses in anger management, or modules with respect to ethics, proper behavior, etiquette, courtesies? Do you have that as part of the curriculum so that students who may not be exposed to it at home are exposed to it in the school environment? Is it well established, or is it in its nascent stages? Religious instructions, or if it is a non-denominational school, instructions in ethics, proper behavior, morality, courtesies?
Yes, Chair. The Ministry of Education, in our last 2 cycles of curriculum revision, we have seen it fit to address those said issues. And therefore, our curriculum that we have implemented in schools right now would have been an integrated type of curriculum that will consider authenticity in implementation. You would be aware that in the past we had curricula that were, should I say, disjointed, that we implemented different subjects separately, and then we hope that people will bring it together. But we have a more authentic way of implementing curriculum now, where we are not emphasizing those borders, but we're making it blurred. And therefore, we teach by using context, situations for problem-solving situations that will involve all the intelligences of the students. So what we are actually doing in this present school curriculum, we are implementing the various visual and performing arts, character, citizenship education. We also have health and family life education in the system, and it is mandated. At the primary level, it is integrated into the curriculum, and at the secondary level, we have it as a standalone subject for the lower secondary level.
Okay, so you can give the committee the assurance that in every primary school in Trinidad and Tobago, the teachers are mandated to offer certain modules on health and family life education from when? Standard 1, is it infants 1 or standard? From infants, they are taught that. Since when have you initiated this particular program?
The last revision of curricula, well, we have started in 2013, I think, when we did the primary curriculum review, and that curriculum should be fully implemented at all levels at the primary school at this time. So it has been there.
And teachers have been trained, you have training material prepared so that teachers can refer to them as they discharge that particular mandate?
We have so done. We have also liaised with the tertiary providers to ensure that they have made that part of it, character and health and family life education, that it is also addressed in the training of teachers who we will employ.
Very well, thank you.
If I do recall, I remember when we had the initial inquiry, there were concerns as to the health and life factor, and that a number of schools had opposed teaching it, and that opposition came also from some parents. And I want to know where we have reached in regard to that.
While, may I just add something? While they may have some persons in resisting the HFLE program, I must say that the guidance curriculum ensures the delivery of all the topics that you just listed, the anger management, the conflict resolution skills, which are delivered through the guidance curriculum within all the schools where we do have the staff.
Okay, and follow-up. I have, especially to our colleague there, a teacher has delivered, and I'm trying to get the operationality of this program. She has delivered the courses, but she is finding that there are a couple of children in her classroom who are continuing to misbehave. They are not absorbing the information. But if there are no school guidance officers who will then provide the additional support, is it then that having the curriculum change alone is going to be inadequate without the school guidance support? I want you to get your perspective on that.
Okay, thank you for that, Chairman. So while we may not, in the instances, if we don't have a resident guidance officer, all principals are fully aware that they make referrals to the district officer, which is the guidance officer, to our SSS, the multidisciplinary team, whereby we will send personnel to either do group work with a particular group of students who may not be reforming or maybe given some issues or problems. We do send the personnel to work and support the schools.
When? The question is it going to be a month from today? Because in changing behavior, I think as soon as the infraction is committed, you ought to alert the student that something wrong has happened and he ought to change his way. If you were to seek to amend a month later, he may have forgotten what he or she did wrong. And so I think clearly there is a gap. We do need to have, from what I'm seeing now, a closer association between the teachers who are trained in family life education and the students who may not be absorbing the lectures with assistance from the school guidance officers. And unless we get that ratio right, I think we are going to have persisting problems.
Right.
Yeah.
Chair, follow-up.
Yeah.
On a comment made by the president of the NPTA, you indicated that one of the things that is needed is telephone etiquette training. I am wondering on whose shoulders you place that responsibility, because I find that more and more we are asking our teachers to parent children, and I want to know what role the NPTA sees in moving away from that trend and getting the parents to parent their children more.
Okay, how we see it is that if parents are trained on the cell phone etiquette, then they can transfer that knowledge to their children. Also, it could be done in the school through different programs. When you have, for example, you have the student councils in schools, and then you would have, I'm sure, you'll have periods in school where you would, like the homeroom period, where you talk on different topics. You can bring it in there. So,
you haven't answered my question as to what is the role of the NPTA in this, in finding the solution. What do you see your role as?
Well, we see our role as training the parents, finding some way to train the parents, get them together. As you said, as I told you all, we have our structure, units, region, right? And we bring them together and do a training with them so that they would know what behavior is expected with the children, with their cell phones at schools.
Okay, and I'm assuming that the people who come voluntarily to your meetings are parents who are already engaged. Do you have a plan for parents who are not engaged?
Okay, well, how I look at it, we are talking about negatives, indiscipline, and violence. But if we look at the proactive way, we see the symptoms, and we try to correct it before it gets out of hand. So I am saying that not all our parents are able to come in the school between 8:30 and 3 because of work. So they may be able to come later. And the parent conferencing is important. Teacher and parent conferencing is important if you want to see a change in behavior and you want to make a difference with the children's behavior. And why not? Why can't we adopt a program where you use the after-school hours and you do what we call a parent academy? So you have the parents the teachers, the children who identify with the gaps or with certain values that may need improvement. You get these parents on evenings, establish something like a parent academy where you can talk, conference, advise, counsel the parents so that they can help their children. And I think that will help a lot in improving the behavior of the children. Because sometimes you have to think out of the box and you have to meet the parents at their convenience too.
Yeah. Could you take off the mic? Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
We did encounter a problem where parents could not during school hours visit the schools because many of them are employed, and that the recommendation was made that the Ministry of Education make representation with the employers of Trinidad and Tobago to provide the necessary hour during the work week, or alternatively to have meetings on a Saturday so that the parents can be represented. Has that been followed up on so that you meet on a Saturday, or at least you get time off from work to attend PTA meetings?
In conversing with parents, I know from school to school, it differs. Sometimes if the need is to have a meeting on a Saturday, I know some PTAs call their meetings on a Saturday. I know some employers do give the parents time off. They have the letter, they sign, the principal or the PTA president will sign it, stamp it, So I know, but it's ad hoc. It's not something like a rule or for all.
Very well. It's something we'll be looking at, yes.
Yeah.
MP.
I want to conclude on some issues, and I want to go back to Mr. Duda is describing the situation at school as a plague, right? And when you talk about plague, you talk about public health approach. And when you talk public health approach, you talk about all the stakeholders being involved. I mean, this is no easy solution. And I really want to express my support to you all because I know it's a really difficult task. You have different stakeholders. And listening to some discussions this morning, I felt that maybe we don't have any problems in Trinidad because I'm hearing all the solutions and all the answers and all the quiet responses to the varying issues that we face. Because we face criminality at school level now and different instruments used. We talk about the cyberbullying, we talk about the phones, we talk about violence, hand violence, we talk about fighting, we talk about safe environment for teachers at school. And I just want to ask and recommend that we seek the help of restorative justice expertise. There are practitioners in Trinidad and Tobago who from time to time come within my view too and within my discussions. And I feel there is a need to take it because we are now forging a movement to maintain peace and serenity and harmony for learning in our school environment. And Mr. Chairman, I just want to conclude with that piece of information and to encourage you all to keep working hard because there's a lot of problems within our system.
That refers to policy.
As the honourable member has indicated, that there is a need to generate peace. And she had indicated that the Ministry of Education, well, again, probably would have engaged in using this particular methodology. But it's just that apparently we moved away from it without even analyzing the data to see whether or not it was actually working in our system. So I'm thinking it's, I mean, once we have all our teams on board, we have the training in terms of the SSSD, I think it's a good way that we can consider and move forward.
Yes, thank you. In order to rehabilitate the bully, because he has problems, and in order to counsel he or she who has been bullied, we do need the trained support staff in the school system. And the committee has learned that they are not there in the numbers which would be necessary to make the difference. So MP Antoine has to come in, but you want to come in? Yeah. All right, but let's give colleagues just a brief intervention. It's 12:11, and this session can go on, but I have to terminate at 12:30. So in terms of time management, I will ask colleague Brigadier Antoine to pose his question. Is it a follow-up, Senator Amin? After Brigadier Antoine has posed his substantive question, a follow-up from Senator Amin, then it is going to be a substantive question from Deputy Speaker Ford. And we will come back to the left. And I haven't asked any of my questions yet.
I'm on again. The Minister of Education, in response on the 12th of January in the House of Representatives, says that the ministry will be developing a positive reinforcement procedure which would focus on rewarding desired behavior displayed by students and serve to promote the recurrence of the same. They're looking at tangible and intangible reward system. Could the ministry explain how this positive reinforcement arrangement will work and the time frame for its implementation, and what are the tangible and intangible rewards of being offered to students for this desirable conduct?
Remember, in dealing with situations like that, we have been mandating our principals to provide the positive reinforcement for students who are showing that they are conforming and they are showing signs of improving. In the school system, we know that there are opportunities that students who have been deviant and have shown signs of realigning themselves, so to speak, that they are given opportunities to serve as class prefects, as mentors, and so forth. That is just one instance of where we can have that positive reinforcement, you know. But we have put together a team involving supervision and curriculum to explore other ways in which we can address this.
Are they on board with this positive reinforcement procedure being adopted by the Ministry of Education?
Not totally, dear member. What I can say, though, is that within recent time, our engagement with our stakeholders have been very intense. And I think that it's a good sign. In fact, we're meeting with them tomorrow.
A response from tutor? A response from tutor as to whether the engagement is very intense, as indicated by Mr. Rupchan, the Chief Education Officer. Is that so? Is that not so? Or is it wishful thinking?
The engagement is intense in certain aspects, but with respect to the issue that was raised by Mr. Antwine, there has been no engagement in that regard.
In short order. Very.
And is there a time frame for the implementation, Ministry of Education?
We are optimistic that we will have this thing in the not too distant future, but again, we will have to, it will be contingent on our engagement with stakeholders.
Senator Amin, your follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All of the initiatives discussed will really be ineffective if we do not have the adequate staff to implement. Earlier, there was an indication that advertisements have gone out for contract positions for school social workers and guidance counselors. My question is, whether the positions to be filled or the number of contracts being offered, if that will then create a full complement, the full complement that is required, as well as what is your time frame? When should these people when are the interviews, the deadline for interviews, when would those people be hired?
Yes, honorable member. With respect to the numbers, it would be the positions are fixed. The numbers is normally cabinet approved. So the numbers are fixed. With respect to the process, we have shortlisted. Interviews have started for the school social workers last week. And we have scheduled for the guidance counselors. It will be around March or April of 2018. So we're probably looking at a June. I know it seems long, but this, you know how the process was, because we had about 437 applications and 652. So we have shortlisted and we're down to the numbers that at least meet the criteria.
But will that fill your requirement for the number of schools?
What I'm saying is I did not look at it in terms of what was asked in terms of the optimal ratio. What I know, it will be fixed against the positions that we have in terms of the cabinet. So I didn't look, I'll be honest, I need to provide you with that. I think we decided we would have, but I didn't look at it from that angle. I just looked at it in terms of the positions that we have as cabinet approved. So it means that if we need additional, we'd have to go back to cabinet, but we would have had a merit list from which we could then draw from the interviews.
All right. Well, Mr. Chairman, through you, I want to ask if the committee could be provided with the optimal number of school social workers as well as guidance counselors required in the schools, so then we can look at filling that gap.
What we were seeking to inquire today is how close are we to the optimum? And we are told that we are very far, but Permanent Secretary has indicated that the interviews are ongoing, so that we should revisit come September, because for the next academic year, 2018-2019, it is then the hope of the committee that the ratio would be enhanced for the next academic year, because there is going to be a period of time necessary to recruit and retain that particular staff. I will now ask the Deputy Speaker to pose one of his substantive questions.
Yeah. With regards to the ministerial response we would have received from the Ministry of Education, and to tie it in with a statement made in his opening remarks, Mr. Dudai, with regards to vacant posts, and there have been a lot of vacancies, and then also tying in the Permanent Secretary, Ms. Baptiste Simmons' statement that vacant posts with bodies. With regards to attendance and punctuality, right, of the teachers in schools, what role will that play with regards to violence in schools? It probably coming too late.
Teachers, absentee teachers.
It probably coming too late.
Late teachers, absentee teachers. Do you have a program for substituting teachers when the teachers are absent? This is a query that we'd like to pose at this time.
There is a substitute system, and it's computerized from the schools. I tested it about 2 months ago to see if it was actually working. So we have a substitute. Whether it is working efficiently, I will have to ask the DSS. But I tested it myself. When a school contacted me with respect to the need for substitute teachers, I went online and tried and told her what to do. With respect to punctuality, the Ministry of Education is working along with the Teaching Service Commission with respect to looking at punctuality and regularity and treating with teachers who we have felt above, you know, because I think the progressive discipline commences at 180 minutes late, and we're looking at that along with the teaching system.
Is it possible that we can, I know we may not have the information now, but could committee be provided with the statistics in terms of, again, attendance, punctuality, you know, in some of the various, same districts you all would have identified, yes. Right? The same districts you all have identified. If it is that we can get some statistics in terms of the attendance and punctuality as we go along, right? Because again, if again there are no teachers present, it means that the children could have a field day. That's right.
Basically, it's the seeking of statistics which maybe could correlate the teacher absenteeism, teacher lateness with school violence. So if we can get data on school districts with high instances of violence, is it that it is correlated with high instances of teacher absenteeism, we will be able to see maybe there is a solution there. But out of curiosity, does the Ministry of Education have a website where someone who wishes to get any information on protocols and procedures to be followed by teachers and pupils for anything, including becoming a substitute teacher, is that readily available on your website? Or do you have a website? Yeah.
www.moe.gov.
Right. So if I want to be a substitute teacher, can I go on that website and find information on how to apply to be one?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe, because I think most of the information is present there, but I would like the opportunity to double check for that specific one, but I know that most of the information, applications, registration, everything is online.
Right, and just out of curiosity again, if a student has had to miss classes because she was pregnant and gave birth to a child and has to be reintegrated into the school, can the parent of that child or the child go on the ministry's website to find out the protocol that has to be followed so that reintegration is going to be easy and facilitated?
Ms. Smith will respond.
The information regarding reintegration to schools will not really be available on the website. However, any parent given following pregnancy can return to the school principal and given our protocols should be and would be allowed back into school. If that principal for any reason is resistant, that parent can seek assistance from the district management team, which may be comprised of the guidance officer, 2 senior school social worker, and or school supervisors, and we will ensure that that child is placed in a school upon case conferencing with the parent and school.
And is it that the parent who may perhaps have a problem with getting this child reintegrated can communicate electronically via the email address of the school supervisor so that the actual communication process can be made easier? Do you have the email contact for the school supervisor in case of any problems, or the school social worker or the school official who is responsible for navigating his way through the bureaucracy?
Chair, that interface takes place at the Education District Office. At this time, the electronic interface is not available, not generally available.
Recommend then that you do make electronic interface. Since all the students are using computers for cyberbullying, or many of them, we can use the computers for ease of communication too. and so it should be used for the positive purposes. So I would recommend that ease of communication be facilitated. Yes, Minister West, you have a follow-up?
Yes, just quickly, I'm interested in finding out what tutor sees as its role in addressing the issue of absenteeism and tardiness among its members.
Member West, we continue to ensure that our teachers are guided, that their regular attendance and their punctuality at the schools is, of course, of importance to the proper functioning of the school and development. So we continue to remind our members. I know our colleagues on the other side don't readily believe this, but we do admonish them at times when they come before us and we are made aware. And we do remind them through our study circles and other things that tutor has to reach its members that they must be regular and punctual at the job site, because it not only creates problems with the students, but with their own colleagues, because it adds additional stress and pressure to the teacher who might have found themselves to school at time. But before I finish, while the PS has said that interviews and so have started for some of student support services, what isn't being said is that some of the persons who are now on the month-to-month contracts have had to reapply for their very positions. And this creates a sort of discord and discomfort among the members of student support services. And those are some of the many problems that we have with the persons who apply. Student Support Services Division, as far as we are aware to date, does not have an actual head. And she also made the point that while there are vacancies with bodies, that too creates a problems within the management of the school. Because if I'm sitting performing the duties and in some instances not even being remunerated for that, then my ability to function where I may be a head or a dean and also still be attached to many classes, my class load has not been reduced to fill those positions, then I can aptly do that. And we have a number of members who have come to us complaining about being in such a position. So yes, there are bodies acting or performing the duties at the schools, but they're not being able to adequately do so because they're still holding classes that they have to attend to outside of what a dean or a head should have in order to really do their job properly. And in terms of the teachers, the ones to respond when a teacher is absent, that program, substitute teachers, that is ineffective. I know the PS will have to double check, but as a teacher who would have tried to utilize that at a school, especially the geography of where some of them come from, while they should have bases, and especially the primary school level, you do not get the benefit of having a substitute teacher come to you in apt time. So in most times, and if you look at how our schools are built, you can't get a substitute teacher before lunchtime, especially if your school is in Blanchishes or in Toko. And I'm just calling those are the remote areas, but even right in the mainframe areas, you're not getting somebody to respond to your school. And we already have many schools that are understaffed by maternity and otherwise.
The NPTA has one short intervention. Please, a short intervention. I will ask my colleague, Mr. Ford, to raise his last question before we... Oh, and Ms. West, you have a question? All right, very well. Okay, NPTA?
Yes, Chairman, members. My whole thing, I'm hearing of absenteeism and punctuality, but I'm really not hearing anything about our teachers and their dress code. I know teachers doesn't have a dress code. And when I say teachers, I'm speaking in particular to our female teachers that our boys are now targeting, okay? And I'm saying that because I've been around a lot of schools where our teachers are being targeted by our students, our senior students in secondary schools, and we are not hearing about that. Teachers are being touched inappropriately, and teachers are leaving the classroom and are now sitting in the staff room because of that.
Thank you.
And,
for the teachers' union tutor to address with their members, so that if there are matters with respect to dress and so on, I think that would be a matter that I would leave for you to address. But MP Ford?
With regards to, as we on NPTA, You mentioned you have roughly 300 active PTAs, and some of the schools are not affiliated. How is that possible, that you cannot be affiliated? Isn't it an automatic process? Isn't it a compulsory process that once you have a PTA, you automatically fall within the NPTA?
No, you have to affiliate and pay a subscription fee every year to be a member. So not all PTAs are affiliated to us.
Okay. And then my last question, Mr. Chairman, the Learning Enhancement Centers, right? It's grouped into educational districts: Caroni, St. George East, Southeastern, and Victoria. Southeastern will consist of what area, to be exact?
Your Claro, Princestown.
Okay. And
Mayara.
right. And I'm seeing the number of students who are assessed based on the document you all provide were, right, 200 students. Is it as a result of the density of schools in the area, or is it that it's a lot of repeat offenders there? That 200 figure that students that would have accessed these services?
Deputy Chair, the reason for the high numbers in Southeastern was because the first Learning Enhancement Center began in Southeastern. For the year 2015, the actual LEC began in April of 2015, and they were that district was the only operational LEC in the country.
So students from throughout Trinidad went there?
No, sir.
Oh, that's not the
In
interpretation.
2015, so the LECs are district-based. Right, so that the reason that the documentation we would have provided the figures would have seen that high number was because it included the original onset from 2015 to present. And it's not because it is all students went to Southeastern District.
Right, yes. And colleagues, it is 12:31. I am a minute and 21 seconds over my allotted time. I will have to close. But before I close, please permit the chairman of the committee to have the last word. And what I have gleaned from today's meeting is that there is supposed to be a disciplining committee in all schools, but there is inadequate communication amongst the stakeholders. We hope that the stakeholders will work together, the PTA, the tutor, the Ministry of Education, the school administration, and the social workers. That's a critical element. We'll work together to have the disciplinary committee functioning and functional. We were told that what was recommended in our report, that critical ratio of 1 to 250 students at the outer limit is around maybe 1 to 600. So there is a huge gap there with respect to the kind of support that we need in the school system for students who have a need for emotional support. That is, those who are being bullied and those who are the perpetrators. Both would need to be guided in a timely manner. I know we were told that the students eventually seek the guidance, but there is such a thing as a timely intervention so that the problem does not get out of hand. So we will be looking at how efficient and how successful you are with respect over the next few months to getting up to that ratio. It came up that cyberbullying may very well be the initial source and the trigger for actual physical fights and physical bullying. We would need to be looking at criminalizing bullying at the cyber level. That once that is a criminal offense, it means that the devices that we have so critical now for communication will not be used for activities which are injurious to societies. We did not focus at all on the issue that we raised on multiple intelligences. This is for the Ministry of Education and the curriculum officers. We now know that students come to the school system with a range of talents, but that the schools in general in Trinidad and Tobago have focused on the training that most of us have had: physics, math, chemistry, algebra. But there is a need for students who are not talented in physics to be exposed to creativity and to different types of programs which would make use of their skills, because we were told by the people in the know that if they are frustrated in their mathematics class, they may want to find another outlet to become a superstar, which would be an improper outlet. So we would want to be looking at to see what the curriculum reform exercise in the school is. I'm very happy to hear that family life education is being taught by schools, teachers from infant 1 level in the schools. So we await to see what program. I'm sure it will have a beneficial impact, but it will take time as the cohort comes through the system. We have discussed at length a number of matters, but really the need for communication amongst the stakeholders, in my mind, is critical. Everywhere we see problems, it's because the parts are not meshing together, and that the activities and the actions of one sector, say the Ministry of Education, may not be implemented at the school level for many reasons. We would be monitoring the situation, we'd be looking at it carefully, aimed at a solution which would lessen the instances. So, MP Jennings-Smith spoke about restorative. The question is, we need to be changing our mind as to how do we get young people to change their behavior. Anger management, I suspect family life education will deal with some of these issues, so we await to see the outcome. Education, as we know, is one of those time-consuming processes. It's not 1 year in and out. It takes 5 years in or 7 years in the primary school, may take another 5 years in the secondary school. So we would be subjecting the students to this type of treatment, family life education, courtesies, and so on. I don't know if you have courses now in civics. It used to, when I was at primary school, way back when, we had courses in civics, understanding who the Minister of Health was, and so on. We were taught these things. We were taught about how to function in society, how the society was structured. I am hoping that we get back to that, and our students are anchored from infants 1 in being part of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago as productive citizens. Before I close, I will ask the representatives of the organizations who have been here with us to give us brief closing remarks. I will ask the PTA to give us a few seconds of closing remarks. Then I will ask the tutor, and I will give the Ministry of Education the final word. PTA?
Chairman, we have realized that we have a different kind of child in the school now. The profile of the child is different. It's a 21st century child. And so we are living in a dynamic society, and education is not business as usual. We have to think out of the box. So sometimes it's very complex and intricate to deal with the students. And of course, we need to have that communication between all stakeholders so that we can put all hands on deck and solve the problems in schools, so that our students, our children, would not be denied the basic right of education.
Thank you, NPTA. Tutor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think what came out here this morning, if we didn't know it before, is that there's a need for greater collaboration and communication between the various stakeholders if we are to address this issue of violence and indiscipline in schools. So I hope that going forward that there could be this greater collaboration and communication between the Ministry of Education, the NPTA, and tutor. I just want to say, if I conclude, that from our side here, we will be submitting some recommendations to the Secretary of the Committee with respect to addressing issues with school violence and indiscipline.
And to facilitate the communication, may I recommend you exchange email addresses? Email is free, I like it, it is cheap, and it is instantaneous. And you can communicate effectively in that way.
We have done that.
Thank you very much. The Ministry of Education.
Yes, it has indeed been a pleasure. The team, we recognize, as was said earlier, that we need to collaborate. And when we collaborate, it must not be, as you say, on paper, but that we actually ensure that we are creating peaceful spaces in our learning environments. And it means that the Ministry of Education, in engaging our teachers, we also have to engage with tutor. In engaging our parents, we need to engage with NPTA. As we move forward, we would like to let you know that in terms of multiple intelligences, we have been looking at that. If you go through the Guardian of today, you'll see a young lady by the name of Judah Critchlow, a graphic artist. She was one of our graduates from our schools. We are seeing fashion, persons coming out with fashion design. We are seeing persons coming out with PE, physical education and kinesiology. I'm trying to remember the various things, the various areas. So we have, in terms of the curriculum reform, we are seeing where students, their multiple intelligences are being considered. And we're offering, one of the things, as you said, is ensuring that our children are actually engaged in the learning process, that our teachers are present and they're there, that school social workers are there, that the whole team that is required to ensure that our children are in learning environments and that we can achieve the learning outcomes for Trinidad and Tobago, that it is done. I think that is the message that the Ministry of Education would like to take away from this meeting today.
Thank you very much, Permanent Secretary. And again, a final word from the Chair. I cannot function without data, and it would be very good if the stakeholders can collect information so that we could, say, compare the instances of violence in 2018 with 2019 on a school-by-school basis. And if we are able to use the data to see how the trend is behaving, hopefully it should be downward, we will know that the interventions are working. Without the data, we will not know if the interventions that we recommend are successful or not. So we need much more data, and it should be possible for tutor to assist, because teachers are in the front line. They should be able to record and report to their head office on a weekly basis the instances they have seen, and therefore on a yearly basis we ought to know how schools are performing with respect to these violent instances and maybe instances also of cyberbullying. I want to, at this point, to thank all our officials for being here. I want to thank, of course, members of the Committee of our Joint Select Committee on Social Services for participating in this very critical discussion. I want to thank members of the media who have been covering us, and to all of our viewers and listeners in the public on Parliament Channel and on the YouTube ParlView. I want to say thank you for being here with us. And usually we get recommendations also from members of the public who have expertise. We invite you, if you have any comment to make on the proceedings this morning, please submit to the Secretariat so that our recommendations will be informed by as many stakeholders as possible. At this point in time, I want to bring this meeting to a close. This meeting at 12:42, 12 minutes overtime, is now adjourned. I'd say good afternoon and thank you.